What if everything you were told about living a good life was slightly wrong? Not completely wrong, just pointed at the wrong thing. We've been chasing health, success, financial security, the right career, the right body, the right address, and people who have all of those things still end up at the end feeling like something was missing. So what is the thing? What is the actual thing? Researchers have been asking that question seriously for decades. And the answer that keeps emerging across cultures, across income levels, across wildly different life circumstances is not what the self-help industry wants you to buy. It isn't discipline. It isn't optimism. It isn't even health in the way we normally mean it. It is something simpler, older, and almost embarrassingly human. It is the quality of your relationships with other people. The Harvard Study of Adult Development is the longest-running study of human happiness ever conducted. It began in 1938 and has followed the lives of over 700 men, and later their families, for more than 80 years. It has tracked their careers, their marriages, their health, their failures, their recoveries. And after 8 decades of data, the conclusion is striking in its simplicity. The people who thrived, who lived longest, who reported the deepest satisfaction, were not the most successful or the most disciplined. They were the most connected. Robert Waldinger, the study's current director, put it plainly. The people who were most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest at age 80. Not the wealthiest, not the most ambitious, the most connected. And the data wasn't soft. It showed up in physical health markers, in cognitive decline rates, in immune function, in cardiovascular health. The loneliness, by contrast, was as damaging to the body as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But here's where it gets more nuanced and more interesting. Because when researchers say quality of relationships, they don't mean popularity. They don't mean having a large social circle or being the kind of person everyone gravitates toward at a party. Many of the people who thrived had just 2 or 3 close relationships. Some had 1. What mattered wasn't the number. What mattered was the depth. The feeling of being genuinely known by at least one other person. Seen. Not performed at, but actually seen. This distinction matters enormously in an age where we have optimized for social breadth at the expense of social depth. We have hundreds of connections and almost no one who knows what we're actually afraid of. We perform versions of ourselves across platforms and in professional settings and even in friendships, carefully curated, safely managed, and then feel inexplicably lonely despite never technically being alone. The Harvard data suggests that this kind of performed connection doesn't register to the nervous system as real. The body knows the difference between being seen and being liked. There is a second thread that runs through the lives of people who age well, and it is closely related to the first. A sense of purpose that exists outside of themselves, not ambition, purpose. The distinction is important. Ambition is oriented toward what you can get. Purpose is oriented toward what you can give, build, or contribute. Psychologist Viktor Frankl, writing from the most extreme circumstances imaginable, observed that the people who survived, psychologically, spiritually, were those who had something to live for beyond their own survival. A person, a work, a meaning. Modern research confirms this consistently. Studies in the Journal of Psychosomatic Medicine found that people with a strong sense of purpose had lower levels of inflammatory markers associated with aging and disease. A study from Rush University Medical Center found that people with high purpose scores were significantly less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. Purpose doesn't just make life feel worth living, it changes the biology of living. The body, it turns out, is not indifferent to meaning. But perhaps the most quietly revolutionary finding is this, and it involves time. Specifically, how people who live well relate to the ordinary moments of their days. Psychologists studying what they call savoring, the conscious act of fully inhabiting a positive experience as it happens, found that people who do this regularly report significantly higher life satisfaction, stronger relationships, and better physical health. Not people who have more good moments, people who are actually present for the ones they have. This sounds simple. It is extraordinarily difficult. Because the mind's default is not presence. It is planning, reviewing, comparing, and worrying. The mind left to itself is almost never where the body is. And the cost of that gap between where you are and where your attention is accumulates quietly over a lifetime. Whole years can pass in a kind of forward-leaning blur, always preparing for the moment when life will really begin. For some people, that moment never arrives. Not because life didn't offer it, but because they weren't there when it did. There is one more thread worth pulling, and it is the one most people find hardest. The people who age with the most grace, the most satisfaction, the least regret. They are almost universally people who learned at some point to let things go. Not to suppress, not to pretend, but to genuinely release the grievances, the old humiliations, the roads not taken, the people who didn't love them the way they needed. Forgiveness research, and it is a serious field of psychology, consistently shows that carrying resentment is physiologically expensive. It keeps the stress response activated. It costs the body years. Letting go is not about the other person. It is never about the other person. It is about reclaiming the energy that has been quietly leaking into an old wound for months or years or decades. The people who live long and well are not people who were never hurt. They are people who decided, at some point, that the hurt would not be the most important thing about their story. So there it is. Not a supplement, not a morning routine, not a productivity system. Deep connection with at least one other person. A purpose that reaches beyond yourself. The discipline of being present for ordinary moments. And the courage to let old pain go. 4 things. Available to almost anyone. Practiced by very few.
And the research is unanimous. The people who do these things live longer, feel better, and arrive at the end of their lives with something most people spend everything trying to find. Enough. If this landed somewhere real for you, subscribe. And if you want to support this work, the join button is right there. It genuinely means something.